Welcome to Family Basics 101. I'm so happy that you've joined us for our Monday class. I'm Dr. Bruce McClure, and it is my hope that today, as we venture into a new series, that this particular lesson will help you understand maybe a little bit clearer why during certain times of the year we're challenged with certain conflicts that might become overwhelming that probably are manageable if in fact we have the right tools. So let's begin today by looking at how do we outpace conflict with some basic ways to handle family conflict. Uh, the potential for family conflict has some very specific hotspots. And not only through the seasons of Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's, but these are potential hotspots that may be applicable throughout the year. For instance, being away from loved ones. It's more pronounced during from Thanksgiving until it warms up in the spring. A second area is handling grief during holidays. A third area is breaking family traditions. And we're in the midst of a pandemic, and many family traditions are having to be broken, compromised, put to the side because of just traveling restrictions and other things that might be going on in individuals' own personal lives. Uh, Being safe from exposure to COVID uh, is causing a lot of families to break family traditions. And then another arena that is a potential hotspot is how do you fight fair during holidays? Uh, Family conflict is family conflict, but during the holidays from Thanksgiving until truthfully Memorial Day, things escalate. One of the reasons families are spending more time around each other. And because family members kind of know each other, they also know what idiosyncrasies, what behaviors really get on their nerve. And that can cause family fights. Uh, Hopefully not physical, but nonetheless family fights during this season of the year. Uh, so as we talk about this, always keep in mind that the makeup of every family is as different as there are families on the planet. Uh, it's almost like a fingerprint. No two families have the exact same fingerprint. Uh, how individuals cope with life within the specific family structure has been and will continue to be studied from generation to generation. The reason being, every family is different. One common constant, however, in each family is the ingredient called people. Uh, every family is made up of one common ingredient, people. Each individual has both learned and genetic tendencies. And I'll talk more about those genetic tendencies on tomorrow. But keep in mind, each individual in that family has learned and genetic tendencies that lead themselves to how individuals respond to life's unplanned events, such as sickness, work demands, disagreements, finances, and so many other events of life. So you have individuals. And when two individuals from different backgrounds come together, uh, that's going to lead to a response. And no matter how you script it, no matter how it's rehearsed, when those individuals get together, there will almost inevitably be some unplanned event, circumstances, a conversation that you could not see coming, and it pops up. Uh, Events are planned, and sickness may enter the picture, and it alters the plan. Somebody couldn't make it. It could be you personally that at the last minute uh, becomes ill and you can't make it. Work demands sometimes can get in the way depending on what you do. A fireman, a policeman, people who work in critical care areas may be called away at the last minute to get away and to do certain things. I was talking to a young lady that I grew up with earlier this morning, and because of the tornadoes that hit in Arkansas, in Tennessee, and Kentucky, uh, she's off on an emergency helping to manage those crises. But if you were planning a Christmas gathering, a family gathering, depending on where you live and what work you do, you could be called out. But the downside of that is, what if you were the coordinator for the family activity? What if you have family members who don't understand emergencies unless it's their emergency? And now they are upset because the person who is now called out on an emergency work demand can't finish the task. So, depending on how self centered other family members are, when that individual comes back from his or her work requirement, there will be family people who've been stirred up and now they're mad and upset because one person or two people had an emergency work situation. What about finances? Uh, you didn't authorize the spending of this money. We didn't have that much money to spend. You spent more on this person than you did on me. All types of financial conflicts can come up during what is supposed to be an enjoyable, pleasant time of the year. But this is driven by this one thing. The makeup of families are different. And the common ingredient in every family are the people who comprise the family. And when you put those ingredients together, most of the time it turns out pretty good, but sometimes it can turn out to almost be a catastrophe. Conflicts, sources, you can identify the source, but that's not like fixing the conflict. We can identify this person or these groups of people. That's where the problems are. But just identifying the source never fixes the conflict. According to a January through June article that I found in the Industrial Psychiatry Journal, it was published by NIH, but it found that human response to events are rooted for the most part in how an individual thinks, how people behave, and how people interact in the specific environment they find themselves. And what NIH found is that is basically globally true. Whether we are in America or in India or wherever, people's responses are driven by, well, how does these individuals who may come together across paths, how do they think? How does this individual behave when they are not around other people? How do they historically behave when they are around other people? how do people interact when they are in a specific environment? Um, Back in the day when they used to have Christmas parties, you could almost predict that somebody was going to turn it out. You could almost predict it. But what you probably could not predict, and sometimes you could, is who's going to turn it out. And sometimes the following week, back in the work environment, around the coffee pot or the water cooler or in the break room, people will get together and they'll say, I never expected that behavior from whoever the person was. So, how people interact in a specific environment they find themselves uh, can also help you learn how these individuals handle conflict. Years and years and years and years and years ago, I was working for a company and they would have Christmas parties. And I went to one. And one of the managers, well respected manager, highly professional manager, uh, and this wasn't a church Christmas party. This was before the church was really high up on my priority list. But this individual manager, well respected, highly professional, uh, got lit up, drunk. And a side of that manager came out that just blew everybody's mind. But it was the environment they were in. Back at work on Monday, the person was highly professional, polished, and it was like it never happened. Natural hazards and conflicts require administrative support as well as psychological intervention and possibly even medical intervention. Natural hazards like we experienced this weekend across Arkansas, uh, Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee, Missouri, those states, hazards such as tornadoes, fires, vehicle accidents, all of this can lead to loss of jobs, property, and even life that has the potential of dramatically adding stressors financially, emotionally, and spiritually upon a family. So put this in perspective. From Friday of last week until today, Monday, look at the tens of thousands of people whose lives are in conflict today because of an event that lasted about a span of 2 hours at the most, from beginning to end, from Arkansas to Kentucky. But look at the impact long term this may have on people's future. The two primary types of conflict or hazards of life are either natural or man-made. For the most part, with natural phenomena, there's not a lot you can do to stop it. But what's going on with the individual before the hazard takes place, whether it's natural or man-made? How do people handle life before the negative sides of life present themselves, whether it's natural or man-made? See, we can identify what the conflict is, but identifying the storm doesn't fix the problem. But as we hone in on the person, that's where you make a better determination, a better judgment of how we're going to get through what we've just identified. Two primary types of conflicts, as I've mentioned, natural or man-made. What's going on within an individual pre-conflict in terms of ongoing life stress, lack of social support, pre-existing medical mental health matters? What is their pre-conflict, pre-hazard socioeconomic status, childhood abuse history, their community connections, etc. Now, depending on how that is answered, it could actually morph into what I call a paratrauma or paraconflict. Para simply indicated that the person or the thing relative to what an act or the state is happening now is predicted as it was encompassing, it's encircling now the individual. They are wrapped up in it, that they see no escape. Life is now focused on what happened, surrounded on all sides, beneath them, above them, all four sides. It's saying this event that just happened basically becomes the straw that breaks the camel's back, and it escalates the person into almost a fight or flight mindset. Now, biblically, in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse number 7, Paul talks about such a possibility. We have this treasure, this who we are, this Spirit of God, the soul inside of us. We have this treasure in earthen vessels, this body, that the excellency of the power may be of God and not of ourselves. Now listen at what he says about conflict and hazards. We are troubled in a para-trouble way. We are troubled on every side, above us, beneath us, all around us, yet not distressed, perplexed by the conflict, perplexed by the hazard, but it does not send us into despair. We're persecuted, but we're not forsaken. We're cast down, but we're not destroyed. The reason being, we have this treasure inside of us. In the essence of who we are as spiritual beings, created in the image of God, we allow that Spirit of God. Instead of the troubles surrounding us just as humans, the Spirit inside of us surrounds the trouble. The Spirit inside of us will surround the conflict, because Paul says we are troubled, but we're not distressed. But we have a treasure inside of us that balances us in terms of our mental, in terms of our social, in terms of our spiritual view of life. I want you to join me throughout the week as we really try to drill down on how to outpace conflict and just some basic ways to handle family conflict. I'll see you back in class again tomorrow. Don't be late and don't skip class.